Ari Rosenbaum here with another fun-filled episode of that 4K podcast. This week's topic, we're going to talk about how being a plan sponsor is very similar to being an NFL head coach. One of those topics where I like to talk about things I like to talk about and try to get 4K plans involved in it. But of course, first things first, go to that 4ksite.com. We have the National Virtual Conference the end of January. We have booked Chicago. We have the logo ready. And for Colorado, we have the brochures up for those who want to sponsor it. Sponsorships start as low as $500. The web pages will probably have it within the next week or two. Thursday, April 16th, I want to say. That will be Wrigley Field. And we got May 5th, which I believe is a Tuesday in Denver, Colorado. So hope you can be a part of it. The National Virtual Conference is for free. If you want to sponsor, one of the live events that we got going for 2025, the National Virtual Conference is free to partake in. Of course, go to that 4ksite.com for further information, and our articles there and all that kind of stuff. But let's get to the topic at hand. I think sometimes being a plan sponsor is like being an NFL head coach. If you think about it, both jobs are filled with high expectations, constant scrutiny, and the kind of responsibility that keeps you awake at night. It's a tough job. My Giants have not been doing well for quite some time, and more than likely, Brian Daboll is going to get axed at the end of the season. And, the similarities there are just very striking. At the end of the day, you're really responsible for the outcomes you can't always fully control, but you'll be judged on them anyway, which is, head coaches really ultimately judged on their record. Some have longer leashes than others based on the circumstances, based on the teams they play for, coach for. And, first things first, drafting the team. An NFL coach doesn't just do everything alone. They rely on scouts, the general manager, and the draft process to bring the players who will execute his vision. The coach has input, but, he needs to think about whether that left tackle could protect his quarterback or whether a rookie linebacker will buy into the system. You pick the wrong people, as the Giants had done up until this year, and you'll be on the unemployment line faster than you could say Black Monday. And a 4K plan sponsor is in a similar type of situation when assembling the provider team. Hiring advisors, record keepers, TPAs, auditors, risk attorneys, they're the players. And, each has a specific role to do. And, you hire the wrong plan provider. You might not get fired on ESPN, but you're going to hear it from plaintiff's attorneys and the DOL. Your coach can't put 11 quarterbacks on the field. The plan sponsor can't rely on one provider to do everything. It's a team approach. You got to pick the right mix. No different than being an NFL head coach. Next, playbook and strategy. You don't go into a game as a head coach without a playbook. It's strategy, the blueprint for how you'll attack your opponent's defense or protect your own end zone. And of course, the playbook is only as good as the players who run it, and it needs constant updating. What worked against the Giants in September may be different than if you're playing the Buccaneers in December. For plan sponsors, the playbook is the policies and procedures, the IPS, the loan policy, cybersecurity, hardship policy, deferral deposit rules, whatever it is. Like a coach, a plan sponsor needs structure, and you have to review and revise what's working, what's not. Plan demographics change. Do we change some of our policies? Do we change plan, design and all that stuff? If you ignore the new rules, it's going to be a problem. And a smart plan sponsor is going to treat their policies as a living document. Just a smart coach adopts a playbook every week to make adjustments. Another similarity between plan sponsors and NFL head coaches is accountability and the blame game. In the Jets doing another piss poor season. If things could go wrong, they blame the head coach. They don't blame the long snapper. They don't blame the players. You know, uh, when the Giants had screwed up and the kicker just missed I forgot they choked, and they didn't blame the kicker with the missed extra points and all that stuff. Ultimately, it's the head coach. They'll say the head coach lost the locker room or couldn't adjust at halftime. Fair or not, the head coach takes the fall, sometimes literally with their job. Plan sponsors live in the same spotlight. You don't have the press conferences, but ultimately the blame game. Participants don't always save enough or they invest in cash when they're 25 years old, but when retirement readiness suffers, it's ultimately the plan sponsor gets the blame. Fiduciary duties like being on the headset. You don't get to say, not my call. Ultimately, it's your decision as a plan sponsor. Excessive fees, bad investment options, liability, all that stuff, it's on you. Game day versus the annual audit. For a coach, game day is judgment day. Weeks of preparation, endless film study, and sleepless nights lead to 3 hours where every decision, punt, or going for it on the fourth down gets second guessed. Fans will boo if you miss the conversion for the first down and you lose possession on downs. Every analyst is going to criticize, and ownership is going to wonder if you're really the person that they should have leading the team. For most plan sponsors, the closest thing to game day is the annual audit. That's when the auditor reviews the playbook, looks at the film, and sees if you execute, correctly or not. Were deposits timely? Were loans processed correctly? Did you follow your own, policies and all that stuff? The consequences are severe if you don't follow. And again, even if you don't have a water on your plan, the annual administration. If you have a good TPA, they could root out some of the problems without the use of an auditor when you don't need an audit. You blow through an audit or review by your plan provider. There's possible penalties, litigation, reputational harm. The fans in this case are going to be the regulators and plan participants, and they're not shy when they're not happy. That's just how it is. Adjustments and halftime talks. No game goes exactly as planned. I know that full well, being a Giants fan. Injuries happen, weather, whatever. That's when great coaches earn their reputations. Halftime adjustments. Guys like Bill Belichick, my favorite, Bill Parcells, Tom Coughlin. Joe Gibbs was a great head coach. Bill Walsh. Bill Belichick won 6 Super Bowls, and he did a lot of changing midstream. He was the defensive coordinator for the Giants, and his defensive plan to stop Thurman Thomas and the Buffalo Bills, I believe that playbook is in the Hall of Fame. Plan sponsors also have to have that flexibility to adjust midstream. They need to have changes in place. If participants are engaging with the education program, maybe you fix it. Maybe fee litigation is heating up, in your industry. Whatever it is, new legislation shifting the rules. You can't cling to the old game plan. You have to make adjustments. No different than a head coach. And, the worst thing a plan sponsor could do is freeze everything in place. You can't keep running the same play into a stacked defensive line. No sponsor can afford to ignore trends in plan design, fees, or fiduciary litigation. Player development versus participant education. A coach isn't just calling plays; he's developing talent. That raw rookie wideout isn't going to succeed without coaching, mentoring, and reps. Development is a long game. Giants didn't do a really good job with Daniel Jones. Poor offensive line, poor offensive coaching, goes to Indianapolis and thrives. Ask Jet fans about Sam Darnold. He's doing a really good job in Seattle. He did a really good job in Minnesota. He just, the Jets just didn't let him progress into the quarterback that he could be. Development is the long game. If you don't build up your players, you're going to be done. Plan sponsors have that similar long game in participant education. You need to educate plan participants on the investment basics, retirement goals, and the impact of dollar cost averaging and compounding. Auto enrollment default investments are great, but they're like a basic strength program. You still need coaching to maximize the top results. Sponsors who ignore education are like coaches who don't bother with practice. They're setting up their team to fail on game day. And of course, my son's favorite seat. He loves talking about the hot seat when coaches and whatnot are on the hot seat and possibly getting fired. NFL coaches know they're on the hot seat the moment they take the job. One bad season, maybe two, and ownership is looking for the next savior. Coaches live under a short leash. Plan sponsors aren't getting fired in front of reporters, but the hot seat is real. I check the articles. Which NFL head coach is on the hot seat? And Brian Daboll is one of the top 2 or 3. Lawsuits, regulatory investigations, participant complaints, they can all turn up the heat on the plan sponsor. But the problem is NFL head coaches could quit. That happens. They could retire. You really can't resign from fiduciary duty as a plan sponsor. You can certainly try to delegate most of those, responsibilities, 338, 316, and all that stuff. But, once you are in that role, you can't fully eliminate your liability. You don't have buyouts. You can't, get your agent to try to negotiate a buyout of your role as a plan sponsor. The stakes may not be as public as getting fired as an NFL head coach, but they're just as personal. The media versus the plaintiff's bar, of course, the media is always circling around the head coach, especially if they smell blood. Every bad call loss is dissected on ESPN, dissected by people in the New York Post and other newspapers around the country. You can't escape it. For plan sponsors, the plaintiff's bar is your media. They're the ones nitpicking. If you're large enough, you're going to be a target. Most plan sponsors that I handle aren't going to be a target, but it's, if someone else is getting sued on, forfeitures, then it's time to look at your forfeiture, the way you handle it. The problem with, plans is that, ERISA litigators, they scour plans for excessive fees, poor investment options, or administrative errors. Once they smell blood, they file suit, and suddenly you're in headlines you never wanted to see. Coaches fear the back page of the New York Post. Sponsors are going to fear people like Jerry Schlichter and other ERISA counsel. Even the terrible ones, who still may sue you, get the case thrown out, but you've spent all that time and money on litigation. The legacy, I think that's certainly a topic. When a coach retires, the question is, what's his legacy? Championships, player development, a coaching tree of assistants who became stars. If you look at Bill Walsh's coaching tree, it's really, really impressive of, who came from that. Bill Parcells, Bill Belichick's tree, got Nick Saban, doing really well. But then you got some guys in the NFL who just couldn't cut it. Matt Patricia, Josh McDaniel, Joe Judge with the Giants was terrible. But legacies matter because they define careers. For plan sponsors, legacy is about, rings or banners. Nobody's going to put up a banner from your ceiling to announce, what the participation rate of the plan was or the average balance. It's really about participant outcomes. Did the employees retire with dignity? Did you give them the tools in order to succeed? Did you protect them for, high fees? That's the Lombardi Trophy for you as a plan sponsor. Nobody's building a statue outside your office, but the lives you impact are every bit as meaningful as the Lombardi Trophy. The final whistle, the parallels are clear. Strategy, accountability, scrutiny, legacy. Both NFL head coaches and 401k plan sponsors must lead under pressure, make tough calls, and accept responsibility for their results. Both operate in an environment where the rules keep on changing. Look at the kickoff changes, the overtime changes, instant replay, all that kind of stuff. Outside forces often dictate outcomes, and where success requires preparation, adaptability, and vision. Obviously, the big difference, coaches have 60 minutes on Sundays to prove themselves. Plan sponsors have a lifetime of participant outcomes to worry about. there's never an off day to being a plan sponsor. But in both worlds, as I said in Apollo 13, failure isn't an option because too many people are counting on you as a plan sponsor. So next time you're reviewing your plan committee meeting minutes or sitting across from record keeper pitching a new service, think about the NFL coach pacing the sidelines with a headset. You're not that different. The stakes are real. They're huge. The scrutiny is constant. And the responsibility is very heavy. Whether it's 80,000 fans or 800 participants, leadership means being ready for anything. And you ever doubt it, just remember both the NFL coach and the 401k plan sponsor know what it's like to be second guessed on a Monday morning. So, you look at some of these records with some people who are NFL head coaches, and wow, somebody like George Seifert. My son wants to know why he's not in the Hall of Fame for 2 Super Bowls, but if you look at his record when he was with the Carolina Panthers, the year he got fired, he was 1-15. But again, a plan sponsor, it's just a longer process and a longer way to, complain. And like I said, there's never an off season in being a plan sponsor. You're always on. The market's always open. The payroll is always running. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of that 401k podcast. Like I said, go to that 401ksite.com. Pretty soon we're going to have the sign-up pages for Chicago and Denver. We're going to solidify. I think we are not going to do Philadelphia this year. I talked to Philly. The week I wanted to do it is the World Cup weekend, and I don't want to run an event in July. That's just not going to happen. So we're probably going to be looking to Washington, D.C. as our third event in September. So that 401k National Virtual Conference, sign-ups for free. What are you waiting for? Full Circle is on Amazon.com. And like I said in an email this week or whatnot, that 401k plan provider handbook will be out in January. There should be a pre-order page within the next couple of weeks. It will be available on Kindle and paperback. So I hope you purchase that. I'll probably sell more than the dozen copies I signed for Full Circle. But that's it. Tune in next week for another fun-filled episode of that 401k podcast. Take care. Bye.